Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I've got a really good tip for you that's going to save you a few bucks, allow you to increase the lifespan of some of your baits that are made out of tungsten. Before I share this tip with you, I'd like to remind you that I do a bunch of lake breakdowns with fishthemoment.com. So if you're looking for a little bit of help on your local lakes or a new lake in your area, check out the lake breakdowns that I've done with them. I'll put the link in my video description. Also, if you're looking to purchase tackle and you shop through Tackle Warehouse, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. I'll put that in the video description as well for you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about tungsten. Tungsten, as we know it, is a very dense, hard metal that is really taking over a lot of the fishing world. The problem with tungsten is because it is so dense, it's really hard to work with. It's very, very hard to melt down and put into shapes. It's actually a pretty difficult material to work onto fishing lures because of that. The reason being that tungsten is not like lead, where you can just heat tungsten up and pour it around your hook shank. The reason being that the tungsten has to be heated up to a point where if you poured it around the hook shank, it melts your hook. That's how hot you need to get it to. Lead, you can melt at a very low melting point and pour it around a hook shank, and it's really actually very easy to work with. Tungsten is not that way. So generally speaking, you have two options when working with tungsten. And this is something that I've really kind of dived into with respect to working with core tackle because we would like to make some of our baits in tungsten. And there's a couple of different ways to go about it. One, you can actually have tungsten pieces poured and then somehow fit onto your bait. And what I mean by that is you can have tungsten like this round ball jig head by Queen Tackle. They actually have the tungsten ball poured, and then you can see there's a little line right here in the belly. That's actually where the hook is epoxied into that uh into that slot, and therefore it then is connected to the tungsten. So that's one way to go about it. And if you have that done, or you have two potentially two tungsten pieces melted or made and then glued together, that will get you a tungsten that is pretty much pure tungsten, and therefore it's going to be smaller and heavier based on the size of the bait. That's one option. So you can see like this Kitech jig, you can actually see is poured in two halves. There's a line that runs around the whole bait. So they have two halves made, and then they compress them together and glue them together around the hook. That's how they actually make these baits. So from that standpoint, that's another way to go about it. The third way to deal with tungsten is you can have really what's more of like a resin made out of tungsten. So it's tungsten powder mixed with an epoxy, and you can pour that. The problem with that is you don't generally get the overall size reduction. The epoxy that resin is in maintains a bigger shape. So it's almost the same size of lead. So you do get hardness of tungsten, but you don't get the size reduction. And a lot of people like that size reduction. In any case, the reason why I give you this information is because it's very expensive to work with. It is not a simple process to go about just to have a jig head made out of tungsten. There's a lot of different variations, and ultimately it leads to tungsten baits being much more expensive. But here's a tip for you that's going to save you some money. So this is something that I've been sitting down and doing. I'm actually replacing some of my worn down hooks. So in an instance where maybe you've got some tungsten that is still good, but your hook is no longer good. For example, you can see this hook right here has been rusted out. I found this in the bottom of one of my tackle trays, and this was a Queen's Tackle jig head. And you can see that that hook fits right into that slot. So what I did is I took the tungsten off, and now I can put a new hook in there. And it's a really pretty easy process. it just requires heat. And specifically, you probably do need a small torch like this. If you put it under a candle, I don't know if you're going to get it hot enough. But here's another one that I want to replace. So this is an 1/8 ounce size. I've used this quite a bit. The hook is opened up a bunch on me. I want to replace it with a more stout hook. So I'm going to show you just how applying some heat can actually make a difference. So I'm going to grab the hook with one plier. I'm going to heat it up. And then I'm going to grab the ball head with another plier. And I do recommend doing this either outside or, at least having good ventilation. I've got windows open all around me. I'm only doing a couple of these. So you see, you heat it up to the point where your hook is actually going to glow. But remember, we're replacing this hook, so I'm not that concerned about it. And I'm just going to really heat this up very, very good. And it requires a pretty substantial amount of heat. I'm sure a good portion of that comes down to what epoxy they're using, but like in this case, I'm going to have to apply more heat, so it didn't come right out. I'm just going to keep applying heat to it until I can pull that hook out. And the cool thing with this is this enables me to put the exact hook that I want into it. So maybe, for instance, if they don't produce a hook that's big enough or stout enough for what I want to use, oh, you want to come? Not quite. I can replace it with a hook that fits my requirements. It fits the style of fishing that I like to do, and it makes really the what you're paying for when you're buying tungsten baits is the tungsten in itself. So if you're able to reuse the tungsten, that one was gonna pop out. Like I said, it requires heat. So I'm just gonna keep this process up until I can finally pop that off. But the cool thing is I can continue to reuse this tungsten, and I can actually just replace the hook. And the expensive part is the tungsten. Tungsten jig heads will cost you quite a bit. Come on. There we go. So we popped it out just like that. So now I've got a bowl of water here. I'm just going to put it in there, let it cool off. And I'm going to sit down and do a bunch of these. And then I've got replacement hooks. So in this case, I'm going to be putting some Owner 90 degrees in these. That's a hook that I really like. But you can do it with everything. You can do it with jigs if you want to do it with jigs. There's a lot of tungsten football jigs now. So you can see that one's a Picasso. It's got the groove. They do the same thing where that's solid tungsten, which is, in my opinion, what you really want, because that's where you get your smallest size and your overall best density. So you get, the hardest sound making out of it. It's just, I prefer as much tungsten as possible, but I'm going to be able to swap out those hooks and really save the part that's costing me a bunch and now replace it and have a perfectly good hook. So to replace it, you really can use a bunch of different things. You can use any of really your epoxies. This is just a quick setting epoxy that's out there. It works with everything from metals to plastics. You can use any quick setting epoxy is really all you need. I'm drawing a blank on the other one that I've got over there. What do we got? Oh, JB Weld. JB Weld's another one that you can use. Just a quick, simple thing to do. And, you just want to use something that will bond metals together. That's all you got to do when you go to your hardware store. Find just a quick 5-minute epoxy will work just fine. You position the hook in there exactly how you want. And it's that simple, guys. But you don't have to throw out your tungsten jig heads in a lot of cases when you have a bad hook or you have a hook that's, run its lifespan. You can replace it with a new hook by using this simple process. So give this a try. Hopefully it works for you. It's something that I've been doing for a while. I do know a lot of pros are doing it. They're buying perfectly brand new hooks and they're replacing the hook with one that they prefer or one that's a little bit bigger so it fits the needs that they're doing. Just a simple process that's a good wintertime project as well. Save up your used tungsten baits from all year long sit down in the winter, make them brand new again. Hopefully, this tip was helpful. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new tip coming out tomorrow.